What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today we're looking at tampers. First up, we've got the Barista Hustle. So this is one of the more popular tampers on the market, and for good reason. It's relatively inexpensive at like $60 in the US. It's all one piece, it's pretty durable. It's got the nice removable stainless base, which isn't that expensive to replace if you were to drop it or ding it. It fits in your hand nicely. It's got a lighter weight to it, which depending on how you like your tampers can be a pro or a con. Yet I think this is one of the better tampers on the market. Yes, it's super basic. There's not a lot to it. There's no customization options. There's no fancy wood handles, but if you just need a tool that'll get the job done and get it done reliably, relatively inexpensive, this is a great option. And I think that it just kind of gets overlooked in some ways compared to what we're going to look at next, which is my ride or die. It's the one I chose. It is the Pullman Big Step. Now this one is kind of the pinnacle of a tamper in my opinion. It's got the right amount of weight. I like a heftier, heavier tamper. It fits in my hand a lot better than the Barista Hustle. So if you have a larger hand, then this is kind of the one you want to go to because it gives you the option to add spacers, which is something that the Barista Hustle does not allow you to do. And every tamper comes with 3 different spacers of 3 different sizes, and you can go in and kind of customize that handle just to be perfect for your grip, which is nice, especially if you're going to use it on the bar. If you're using it at home, there's really no reason to have something like that other than comfort. You're not going to, get hand fatigue tamping a few drinks every day. But this one is nice. It's heavy. It's got a very, very wide base, which fills up the entire portafilter, which can be a pro or a con. And I want to talk about that a bit further. And since I mentioned the weight a couple times, let's just weigh them out right now, just so you can see what you're looking at in terms of the difference between the two. Barista Hustle weighs in at 254.6, and the Pullman weighs in at 369.9. Well, what kind of comparison would this be if I didn't actually put these two tampers to use? So first up, I'm going to use the Barista Hustle tamper. I'm going to pull a shot and talk about the usability, the feel, the size of the handle, some of the pros, the cons, and a closer look at one of the reasons why I ended up going with the Pullman over this one when I chose a tamper to buy. And one thing I want to point out right now is I won't be using the OCD tool or any distribution tool during this test because I want to show you what the tamper does without that. So even though the Barista Hustle has a shorter handle and I don't necessarily like that, it does allow me to feel the edges of the basket to assure I'm getting a flat tamp. The other benefit of the Barista Hustle design is the little notches in the actual base itself keep you from having any sort of issues with suction. So that's one thing that I do have an issue with the Pullman. And I'll talk about that a bit more later. So pointing out right now is one of the things I didn't like about this tamper, and it's the fact that there's some extra space there. So it doesn't actually tamp the full basket, you're missing just a millimeter or less. But that bothers me as someone with OCD. I don't like that. And maybe this is all in my head, but one of the things that I noticed between these two tampers is when I use this one, the espresso does taste a little bit different. Not in a bad way, but I think missing just that small little space of the tamp does make a difference in the extraction process and the way it tastes in the cup. But again, maybe that's all in my head. It just bothers me that it's not tamping the entire basket totally flat. Next up, let's talk about the Pullman Big Step and a couple of the reasons why I ended up choosing this one over the Barista Hustle. So for me, there were 3 factors that really pushed this one over the edge. One was I just like the weight of this tamper. It feels more accurate when I have more weight, and I feel like I can focus a little bit better on maintaining that flat push down when I have that extra weight kind of assisting me through it. But it does make it a little more difficult to feel for the edges, unlike the Barista Hustle. The one thing I did love about this as well is the diameter of the base fits exactly in the basket. It's exactly the same size, give or take a tiny, tiny amount of space, so there's no grounds left behind. But the only risk to that is if you're not careful when you pull the tamper out, you could very easily suction your puck out and you'll notice a big crack or an open space around the edges if you do that. So carefully kind of slide it out. I like to give it a slight twist as I pull out, which tends to relieve any of that suction. Like I mentioned before, I do feel like I can taste a difference between these two tampers. You know, they're doing the same job, I'm putting the same pressure, but that little bit of space I feel like does make a difference. So the shots that come off the Pullman, for some reason, taste better to me. They're a little bit sweeter, a little more balanced. It just overall just seems to extract a better shot. But again, maybe that's all in my head. Now let's go over what we talked about with the Barista Hustle tamper and its list of pros and cons. And one thing to remember through this whole process, when I go through the pros and cons list of both of these tampers, what I see as a pro could be someone's con, and vice versa. So in the end, I'm not trying to push one or the other. I do have my preference. I ended up purchasing the Pullman, and this Barista Hustle came from a friend of mine. So just keep that in mind as I go through this. This is just more of my views on it. If you have a similar view, that's great. If not, that's great too. So let's go from left to right. Let's talk pros. Of course, it's lightweight in comparison to the other option. It's got a durable body. It's like that high impact ABS plastic, which means it can just basically take any beating you're trying to dish out. It's got no suction because of that nice divot in the base, and it has less pieces. So there's only 2 pieces that make up this entire tamper. So it's kind of hard to lose any piece of it, and it's less expensive overall. The cons, it's got a shorter handle, so it might be harder to fit in those with bigger hands. It's a little bit slippery in texture. There's no adjustability, so that kind of goes with the short handle piece. No customization, so no fancy wood handles or anything like that. And it's got a smaller base, so it doesn't tamp the full basket. Now let's talk the pros and cons of the Pullman Big Step. But before I jump into the list, again, I just want to say I chose this one for a couple really specific reasons, and both tampers are great at what they do. Again, they're very simple tools, and you know, a lot of it comes down to your preferences on certain things like size, weight, customization. And for me, I'm very much into the aesthetics of this piece, as well as just the overall tactile feel of it. So in the end, those are big factors as to why I chose it. But let's dive into the list. So starting from the left, it fills the entire basket. It has a nice adjustable height. Like I mentioned, it has 3 different spacers. You can kind of customize the height however you'd like. It's got a nice soft grip for your hands as you push down. It's customizable in terms of different handles, bases, all that fun stuff. And it's got a nice weight for a centered balance. Cons, it does have suction. It does tend to pull the puck out if you remove it too quickly. It's harder to clean, especially the soft base around the finger grip where coffee tends to kind of stick to it. You'll have to use a damp microfiber towel to clean that off. It does have more pieces, so there is a potential for losing a piece here or there. You can buy those pieces online, but they're not really inexpensive. It needs more care. Generally, I like to take mine apart just in case something gets wet or there's coffee in there, because pieces will stick together, and in the long run also it's a more expensive piece. Last but not least, let's talk final thoughts on these two tampers. So let's just talk about tamping in general. It's a very simple process. It doesn't really require an expensive tool, but a lot of these things that we do when it comes to espresso have a lot to do with our comfort, our budget, and aesthetics. And let's face it, we all like to have nice things. We're all talking about having an espresso machine and making fancy coffee. So, you know, I'm not going to fault anyone for purchasing a tamper even more expensive than the Pullman I've got, or anything less expensive than even this Barista Hustle. In the end, it all just depends on what you want to do and what you value and your budget and things like that. For me, the Pullman Big Step was the best choice because of fit, finish, aesthetic, and just overall feel. The Barista Hustle is still a great tamper, and honestly it would be my second choice and be a high recommendation from me for new baristas who don't want to put out $160 or $170 on a tamper. Let me know in the comments below if you own one of these two and what was your reasoning for picking one. Also, if you don't own one, let me know what tamper is your favorite and why you chose it. Do you like weight? Do you like the aesthetic? Do you like the ease of use? I'm just curious to see what everyone likes about their tampers. And a big thank you to my February Patreons, Tim, Steven, Claire, Jonathan, Aiden, Nathan, Samantha, Mika, Bound Coffee, Spookus, Noel, Thomas S., Thomas B., Lisa, Robert, Brian, Ro, Squeegee, Matthew, Christopher, John K., and Ninja Warrior Coffee. Of course, big thank you to the Barista and Barback tiers. If you want more information on my Patreon, that's in the upper right-hand corner right now, and there's a link down in the description. And of course, a big thank you to you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that little bell button for notifications. I post new videos every Friday. Follow me on Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, and as always, stay caffeinated, Pony Boy.